Well, 30 people have died in the worst ever migrant drowning in the English Channel. Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he's appalled by what's happened and he'd leave no stone unturned to stop human trafficking.
Underscores how dangerous it is to cross the Channel in this way. And it also shows how vital it is that we now step up our efforts to break the business model of the gangsters who are sending people to sea in this way. Now is the time for us all to step up, to work together, to do everything we can to break these gangs who are literally getting away with murder.
All right, to discuss this, let's bring in the international panel from Canberra, co-host of Outsiders, James Morrow, and founder and CEO of Recastled, Koshagata in Melbourne. Well, James, this is an absolute tragedy. We know this story well in Australia from what we've gone through in two successive governments, the Howard government, of course, the Abbott government. It comes down, I have to say, to Boris Johnson, not just to what he does in his country, but what's happening in France. And of course, they're leaving France where they could, apply for asylum to get to Britain. And they're doing that because of migration and welfare opportunities in Britain. We were told this by the Indonesians, but at some point you're going to take the sugar off the table. What's going to happen here?
Well, exactly right, Peter. I mean, this is a moral failing, I think, really on both sides. On the one hand, the Johnson government needs to do more to make Britain a less attractive destination for these illegal migrants. Who have, as you say, they've come from France, they've come through a number of other countries. And as we all know, our law on this from when Australia went through this exact same process, that it is, vital for people to apply for asylum in the first safe country in which they land. Now, if anyone's going to tell me that France isn't a safe country to land in and apply for asylum, well, they could eat my chapeau. But that said, France has a moral responsibility here to do more to stop the migrants from leaving. I mean, if they don't leave, if they are policed and stopped from leaving by the Macron government, which of course they want them out of there, they say, yeah, no, go, because they're not France's problem anymore. Well, France needs to step up and do more to stop them from setting out to sea in the first place. And I think that's the greater moral failing here.
Yes, and he can lecture us about submarines, but I think he's got a real issue there with the deaths on his hands there in France. It hasn't helped, though, Kosha, that Boris Johnson's under pressure here, and it comes at a time when he's really got to lift his game. I mean, I watched that speech the other day, replete with all those references to Peppa Pig. There's talk of colleagues drafting letters of no confidence in the Prime Minister. It's all looking pretty chaotic.
That's right, Peter. And I think, he diagnosed the issue correctly, where he said it's time to break the business model of illegal immigration. But then it's always diagnosis isn't enough. And at some point, you've got to lead and figure out what the right solutions for that are, because this is wildly unpopular in all countries around the world. Ultimately, illegal immigration is a very unpopular issue, and people do want the laws enforced better around that. So there's three things. One is enforcing your law so that you're not creating a magnet, because a magnet is what's always going to incentivize these types of smugglers, and it's happening all around the world. The second is that safe first country harbor issue that James mentioned, and putting some pressure on France. There's an example, an analog to that in the U.S., where Mexico has a very well-guarded border to their south. However, when Central Americans come through, they happily sort of pass them along towards the U.S., and that was something that was negotiated in the previous administration. So Boris Johnson might want to look to something like that. And I think the third thing, too, is this whole issue of illegal immigration really stands to benefit from a reframe where it's viewed as sort of, the proponents of it frame it in this kind of context of being compassionate about it, and we need to accept refugees or a certain percentage of people that are suffering in different parts of the world. But I think the real compassion around that would be to see what the advanced countries of the world can do to help those countries stabilize and improve their economies so that people can stay where they are and have a chance at a better life, and not feel that their only shot in life is to travel and make these dangerous trips to other countries that they don't really share much in common with.
Look, you're spot on, because it often leaves these countries without their best talent when their best talent is forced to flee, because these are very often economic migrants. It's not the case that they're fleeing persecution, and persecution is the fundamental principle in the UN Charter. It's not that you want a better life. You can understand that, but that doesn't give you rights at international law.